following exercise is called a dynamic core twist, focusing on rotation in front crawl, predominantly working the torso region and the pelvis or the hips. Okay, so two levels to this exercise. The first one is just resuming the plank or press up position. Okay, and so basically we're just going to take our knees from side to side. You notice my hips are rotating. So we want to make this more dynamic now, so start to speed it up. So my obliques, my core, transversus abdominis, glutes, hamstrings, hip flexors and quads and calf muscles are all working. My head is in neutral, eyes looking down. You try to do 10 of those on each side before you have a rest. If you want to make that more difficult, you can then add an ankle weight or a knee weight to make that a little more difficult, but that will increase the tension and stress on the hip flexors. The following exercise is called the side star to side star. And it's going to be focusing on helping to strengthen the torso and hip region to help improve the rotational aspect of the front crawl stroke. So to start with, in its most simplest form, we're just going to lie on our side, supporting ourselves with our elbow. So elbow is underneath our shoulder. We're going to straighten our legs so our feet are stacked on top of each other. We're going to keep our hand on our hip, and just initially to start with, okay, we're just going to take that hip off the floor. So actually primarily the major muscle working here is the oblique muscle, but the core and transversus abdominis muscle and the glutes and the quads and hamstring are also working to stabilise. So the idea is ideally we want to start here for 5 seconds, and then we want to rotate to the other side, hold for 5 seconds, and rotate to the other side for 5 seconds and rotate to the other side. If I want to make that more difficult now, I can now have a hand out. 4, 3, 2, 1 and rotate. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and rotate. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and rotate. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and rotate. If I want to make that more difficult again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push up. So now hands is directly beneath my shoulder. I'm still nice and stacked. I'm going to hold that position for 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And rotate. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and rotate. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and rotate. If I want to make it more difficult now, place the hand over my shoulder. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and rotate. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and rotate. If I want to make that even more difficult, I can now lift the leg and hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and rotate. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and rotate. So I'm now bringing in the abductors. So I'm taking my leg away from the centre line. 4, 3, 2, 1 and rotate to the other side. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and relax. The following exercise is called the Russian twist, which is helping to strengthen the rotation aspect of the front crawl stroke. So to start with, in its most simplest form, you're just going to sit in this seated position with our feet flat, knees bent, and we're just going to lean slightly back, so suddenly now we've got some loading on the abdominal muscles. The main muscles being used in this is the core, the transversus abdominis muscle. If we focus on bringing our belly button towards our spine, we want to keep our spine nice and long and our head in neutral. So from this position, we're just going to start with the hands. We're just going to rotate to this side of the hips, and then you're going to take your hands to the other side. So this is the most simplest form. The other muscle, key muscle that's involved here, is the oblique muscles, which are the muscles that run down either side, connecting to the hips. So this is the most simplest, although if you've not done much rotational, this is probably the best place to start. Okay, if I want to make this more difficult, I can now take my feet off the floor. Without adding any weight, I can then make that more difficult by adding a stability disc or a cushion. So suddenly now I'm having to balance and work really hard now to maintain all that really good posture. Head still, long back. It's okay to twitch, and as you can see, because my body's working really, really hard to stabilise itself. If I want to then make that more difficult, I can add a weight. You could use, this is a 2 kilogram weight, you could use a medicine ball, 1 or 2 kilos. Okay, so I can just start by rotating from side to side with my feet flat on the floor. Again, I can still feel those muscles working really hard. If I want to make that more difficult, I can take feet off the floor, still using the weight, placing the hands down. And again, if I want to make that more difficult, I can use the Bosu ball or stability disc. And again, with the weight, I can then take my feet off, and I'm still stabilising. I'm actually working quite hard now. So there's a lot more muscles working now to stabilise myself. Okay, so you're going to do sort of 8 to 10 of those on each side. Okay, the following exercise is called plank rotations. There's a couple of different exercises for this. Hence the word rotation, focusing on rotating the torso and the hips in line with trying to improve the ability to do that in the water in front crawl. Okay, so the first exercise we're going to do is we're going to just get ourselves into the press up position or plank position. So both hands directly beneath the shoulders, our feet just comfortably hip width apart, spine in neutral, and my eyes just looking sort of downwards and slightly forwards as if I was swimming in the water. So I'm going to pick up my right leg, bend my knee, and I'm going to carry it across towards the other side, to the outside of my other elbow. I'm going to bring it across and then to there. So I'm actually rotating from the hips right the way through the spine, rotating about the spine and the vertical axes. So other than using my shoulders to support, key muscle groups involved here are my obliques, my glutes, quads and hamstrings. I'm just rotating, I'm focusing on keeping my head still and allowing my body to rotate. Okay, the other variation of that is similar rotation but with the arm. So if we imagine that our arm, front crawl, is going over a barrel, so it's kind of creating that sort of, so the water would be pressing with the hand against the forearm, elbow high. So we're kind of going to simulate that from back into the plank position with the right arm, just coming through and rotating. So imagine I've got a big barrel of beer and I'm just carrying it through. Okay, and then you can change sides. It's the same thing, bring the arm through, keeping the elbow, hand and shoulder in line with each other. So keeping the head still and rotating, so actually getting that shoulder to roll round and rotating so the top arm comes all the way round. The following exercise is called Thread the Knee, focusing on hip movement to help support the rotational aspect in the front crawl stroke. So we're going to start off in the prone position, so hands directly beneath the shoulders, and push ourselves up into the press up or plank position. And then what we're going to do with my right leg, I'm just going to bring my knee through and then change legs. I'm just going to bring the knee through, past the belly button, over towards the opposite elbow. This is also working the core, the obliques, hip flexors, quads, hamstrings and glutes that support the movement. If I want to make that more difficult now, I'm going to take one hand off and one foot off, and I'm going to try and meet in the middle. So there's some rotation going on there. There's also stability. So my core abdominal muscles are working really, really hard. My head stays in neutral, eyes looking down, slightly forward. And relax. If I want to make that more difficult, I could add ankle weight to my ankles, so that would increase the resistance. It would also increase the resistance because I'm bending, flexing the hip. It will increase the resistance in the hip flexion as well. So you just need to be careful not to overdo that. Following exercise is called the twist and throw or twist and touch. It really depends on the space or whether you have a ball or not. Again, we are looking at rotation, helping to strengthen the rotational aspect in the front crawl stroke. So there's several ways in which we can do this. So to start with, what we're going to focus on is standing with both our feet facing forward, slightly soft knees, nice tall posture, pulling in your belly button towards your spine. And to begin with, all we're going to do is you're going to maintain your feet going forward, and you're just going to aim to touch the wall behind you. This is actually quite a nice warm-up exercise as well. You're keeping your feet facing forward and just allowing the top half of the body through the hips to rotate and try to touch the wall behind you. This is a great one to do in pairs. Okay, if you're struggling to touch the wall, you can just get a little bit closer, or again, you can have something in your hand and just rotate. You could have a weighted ball or a weighted something in your hand to take across to the other side. Just check in with your feet and make sure they remain planted and fully on the floor. You could actually also do this on your knees. This really does puts a little bit more emphasis on the rotation, because it kind of takes some more on the upper body, torso, rather than the hips. Because as you can see, I can't rotate quite as much. I can really feel the tightness going through the back. Again, I could add a ball or a weighted ball to increase that. To make it more specific, I could have my hands in line with my shoulders, as in the catch section of the stroke. Okay. If I was going to throw, I would be standing sideways on. I start with the ball on the outside furthest hip, and I would be rotating. I'm releasing the ball, so I'd be releasing the ball towards the wall. But you could just do this. So as you can see, I'm rotating, keeping the hand, so I'm not over rotating, but I'm using my core, my transversus abdominis, my obliques. To make that more difficult, this could be a weighted ball or a weighted something that I could do, and I could just change sides and then just rotate. Keeping the knees nice and soft as you rotate through the vertical axes there. Okay. Okay. This next exercise is called the Swiss ball Russian twist, and it helps to strengthen the rotational aspect of the front core stroke. So just to get ourselves onto the Swiss ball, we're just going to gently lean our body into the ball. You want to aim to try and get the ball just on the shoulder blades, okay, just between the shoulder blades, with the majority of the body off the football. So we're going to focus on having our feet flat on the floor, knees in line with your hips, and then you want to just raise up your hips so they're now knees, hips and shoulders are all in line with each other. So we need to keep this position throughout. We're then going to extend our hands so they go directly above our shoulders. Okay, we're going to keep that gap between the hands, and we're going to roll the Swiss ball underneath us as we rotate to one side and then to the other side. So you want to focus on allowing your head to roll and follow the hands. So you don't need to do that sort of 6 to 8 times on each side. Just going to relax. To make that exercise more difficult, we can add a weight. So whether that is a bag of flour, or in my case, a 2 kilogram weight. So we need to set ourselves up. Do be careful when you're setting yourself up where you are and that the ball doesn't slip from beneath you. So make sure you've got a good grip surface on the floor with contact with the ball. Okay, so once I think I'm in the right place, I'm going to set myself up again. Place the weights between my hands, hips up, and I can resume again. Okay, so trying to keep those hands in line with your shoulders throughout. Your eyes follow the weight all the way through. Keeps those hips up, rolling from side to side, nice and smooth and with control. Key muscles we're working here are, obviously the shoulders are working a little bit because they're taking some weight, but we're working our glutes, our hamstrings, our quads, our core muscle and our transversus abdominis muscles. The following exercise is called the alternating crunch twist, and it's designed to help strengthen the rotational aspect of the front core stroke. So we're looking specifically at the torso, the obliques, the core, the transversus abdominis if we pull our belly button in towards our spine. We're also going to be working our shoulders, our quads, hamstrings and glutes in the leg movement part. Okay, so we're going to lie flat on our back. We're going to have our fingertips just gently touching, supporting on our head. We're going to bring our knees together up and over towards our chest. We're going to take our shoulders off the floor, and they remain off the floor throughout the entire exercise. We're going to extend our right leg out, and then we're going to rotate our torso to bring opposite knee to elbow. So then we're going to alternate. So it's really, really important, and we really focus on rotating the torso, keeping the elbows nice and wide will really help you to achieve this. You're going to aim to do 8 to 10 of these on each leg to make a set. If you want to make this exercise more difficult, you can add some weight around the ankles. For example, you might have a set of these that you can just place and tie around the ankle. That will put an awful lot more emphasis on the hip flexors as well. So you do need to be careful that you don't make that weight too extreme. Okay. The following exercise is called a heel touch, and it really does focus specifically on strengthening the oblique muscles, which are important in the rotation section element of the front crawl action. So we're going to start off in a supine position. Have our feet flat on the floor, our knees bent. Lie down on the floor. Just get ourselves nice and relaxed. And what we're going to do is we're going to raise our shoulders up off the floor and our hands. And I'm basically going to reach round. So I stay fairly low and I just touch the heels of with my fingertips. If I want to make that more difficult, I need to increase my range of movement by trying to get past the heel. As you can see, I'm doing a really good job with that. You'll aim to do 6 to 8 of these on each side. It's actually quite an intense exercise on the obliques. The following exercise is called the side to side. And it's focusing on the rotational aspect of the front crawl stroke. So we're looking at strengthening and through the torso region and the hips. So to start with, in the exercise in its most simplest form, we're going to lie on our back. It doesn't have to be a big fit ball. It can be a smaller ball or a net ball or something, but something light, something still quite wide. So we're going to lie in this position. Have our palms face down, we're going to lift up our knees, so our knees are in line with our hips. Okay, head in neutral, so everything stays on the floor, and then we're just going to roll, drop the knee to one side. Just before it touches, we're going to come away, and we're going to just take the knee to the other side. Okay? The wider the ball between the knees, the easier it is. So you could then move from this ball to a more narrow ball, which I have here, which means I will now have to move a little bit more, put a little bit more pressure on the obliques, the core, the transversus abdominis muscle, through the back of the glutes here. You feel a really big stretch, particularly if you keep your hands flat on the floor in a kind of crucifix position. It's really, really important that you keep the knees in line with the hips throughout. Okay, so you can try to do 6 to 8 of those on each side. If I want to progress that exercise on even further, I'm now going to do it with straight legs. Okay, so resuming now, so back on my back, my knees are straight, feet, knees, hips are in line with each other. I'm going to slightly point my toes, palms face down, head in neutral position, and now I'm going to take my feet, knees, all the way to one side, just before they touch the ground. I'm going to bring them all the way through, across to the other side. This is a lot harder. Okay, again, it's really, really important you keep the legs nice and straight. Just before they touch the ground, bring them back through. 6 to 8 on each side. If I want to make this exercise more difficult, I can either put a light weighted medicine ball between my feet and do the same thing. So imagine this is a medicine ball, it's a net ball. Okay, the trick is here though, you'll also be bringing your adductors into play to hold the ball in position so it doesn't slip between the feet. So you are actually bringing another muscle group into play. So it doesn't have to be very heavy. Okay, if I want to make that without the ball more difficult, then again I can go to ankle weights, which I can then put across around the ankles as well. The following exercise is called the double leg twist, and its main focus is to help strengthen the rotational aspect of the front crawl stroke, so predominantly looking at the core region of the torso and also of the hips. Okay, so we're going to take the exercise in its most simplest form. So we're going to place our hands directly beneath our shoulders, palms flat on the floor, fingertips pointing towards our feet. We're going to lean back slowly slightly from the hips, keeping a nice long back to start with, drawing your belly button in towards your spine. Bring your knees up, and we're now going to the sort of crunching sort of motion there. Instead of bringing the knees directly up towards my chest, I'm going to take my knees to the side. So it's in that position there. So you push away, bringing the knees to opposite side that you're coming up towards. So there's lots of muscle groups working here. You've got the obliques, you've got the core and transversus abdominis muscle, you have the glutes, the hip flexors, and the quads also. If I want to make that exercise more difficult, I can take my hands away now, which is what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to rest them slightly towards the side of my head. So I'm going to take that position again, making sure both elbows go either to the same side, to the outside of the opposing knee. Making sure your feet and shoulders stay off the floor at all times. So you're going to do 8 to 10 of those on each side. If I want to make that more difficult, I could add ankle weight. Put that around there like that on both. That will put more emphasis on the hip flexors, which you might not want to do. Or Bosu ball, stability disc, or a big cushion that when you're sat on it, it forces you to stabilise yourself. So, on the Bosu ball, same position, leaning slightly back, and then we're going to, so it's not quite as smooth, because I've got lots of other muscles working, trying to keep myself stable without falling off. The following exercise is called a resistance band low to high. Okay, so I've just fixed one. This is the only thing in my room that doesn't move. So all I've done is I've just securely fixed it to something that I know will not move at all. Created a slightly long side because I want my hand furthest away from the fixed point to have hold of the most of the resistance band, whilst my other hand is just holding on to it. Okay, so we're going to start sideways arm. You're going to start with your hand closest to your opposite hip, okay? And then what you're going to do is you can just go from, so slightly soft knees, you're just going to go from low to high, low to high. So taking that band, your hand right across your body and rotating. So this is working your hips, your core. That's also working my chest and my front of my shoulders. Okay, and then I can turn around, so change it slightly. So I've now made the long side in my other hand. And again, nice soft knees, rotating. So I'd aim to do 6 to 8 of these on each side. To make it more difficult, you can increase the tension in the band you're using or use the next band up, which is adds slightly more resistance. You can also use a ball, so you could use a weighted ball. And again, you could start from low to high, so you're going from low to high, sometimes also known as the wood chop. So there, rotation, rotation, and then same on the other side. So you're doing that wood chop, bending the knee, rotating that waist and the pelvis. Again, 6 to 8 of those on each side. This final section, we're going to focus on linking the rotational work that you've been doing in the series of exercises by performing 2 minutes of continuous swim movement using stretch cord or a resistance band. And the aim of that then is to focus on transferring the rotational core work that you've been doing into the front core swim movement. So before we get started, I just want you to just make sure that your cord or your resistance band is secure and that they're both of the same length. You've got the same resistance going through each arm. So before we start, we're going to try to simulate the swim action as much as we can. So we're going to kind of take our legs out of the process, if that makes sense, by flexing at the hips, so our shoulders and chest are now pointing towards the floor. Our head and eyes are looking downwards and slightly forwards. Soft knees, but we're able to rotate from side to side without having to move our feet. Okay, so you want to have secure grip of your resistance band or stretch cord. We're going to do some single arm work, followed by some alternating arm work, and then we're going to repeat that process, and that will last for just about 2 minutes. So if you want to get yourselves ready, okay, so starting off with both arms out in front, the working arm is my left arm, I'm going to leave my right arm out. I'm going to focus on rotating and pull, push. If I rotate, my shoulder finishes pointing towards the wall behind me. If I don't rotate, it's actually really hard to do. So you'll pull, push. Okay, I'm just going to do 2 more. Okay, and then we're going to change sides, so make sure you're well set up there. Okay, and then pulling through again, so rotating from the hip, driving the hand back past the hip, keeping your eyes and head nice and still. Really rotating, that's good. And then we're going to go into alternating, so start with your arms together, and then we're going to alternate. So focus, really focus on that rotation. So that shoulder finishes facing the wall behind you. That's good. Okay, we're going to go back to singles. So set up again. Rotating. Keeping that non-working arm as a supporting arm in the water, is staying in line with the shoulders. And 1 more. Really focus on rotating, putting that hand back past the hip. 2 more. 1 more. And then back to alternating. Keep that head nice and still.